Thank you, David. Welcome to worship at Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church. We acknowledge that the land on which our church stands is part of the ancestral grounds of the Piscataway people. I am Susannah Schiller, one of the worship associates who plans services in collaboration with church staff. I'm happy that you chose to be with us today. If you're using Zoom this morning, please run your cursor around the perimeter of your screen to find the microphone icon and be sure to remain muted throughout the service so we can all hear the speakers and David's piano clearly. By moving your cursor around the edges of your screen, you may also find the option for switching between gallery view and speaker view. Clicking on the bubble icon opens the chat screen where you can read timely messages during the service from our Assistant Church Administrator, Phil Brown. Right now, I invite you to type into chat how many people are viewing from your screen. Please type 1 if it's just you. Later in the service, you will be invited to use the chat feature to post your joys and sorrows. And at the end of today's service, you will have the option of joining a small chat group in a breakout room by staying on Zoom. Did you know that Paint Branch has its own YouTube channel? All of our online services from the past 2 months are posted. Go to YouTube and search for Paint Branch UU Church, and you will find them there. Just like our other services, today's is being recorded. I have one announcement today. The Green Team will meet at 11:45 today to plan the Green Team worship service. The Zoom link is in the continuum. Now let us join together in worship as I read "The Church Has Left the Building" by Margaret Weiss. The church is not a place, it is a people. The church is not only a steeple above the tree lines, streets, and cars. Rather, it is a people proclaiming to the world that we are here for the work of healing and of justice. The church is not walls built stone upon stone, held together by mortar, but rather person, linked with person, linked with person. All ages and genders and abilities, a community built on the foundation of reason, faith, and love. The church is not just a set of doors open on Sunday morning, but the commitment day after day and moment after moment of our hearts creaking open the doors of welcome to the possibility of new experiences and radical welcome. The church is not simply a building, a steeple, a pew. The church is the gathering together of all the people and experiences, and fear and love and hope in our resilient hearts. Gathering together we can to say to the world, welcome, come in, lay down your heartache, and pick up love and hope. For the church is us, each and every one of us, together, a beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it. Now Peter Wathen Dunn will light the chalice.
Thank you, Susannah. As I light this candle and reflect on what has happened in the year since the coronavirus was declared a pandemic, I feel the weight of our separation. We light the chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind, the helping hands, the loving heart, and the radiant spirit. Encendamos esta cáliz para celebrar el universalismo. Esta es la iglesia de la mente abierta, de las manos amigas, del amor del corazón y del espíritu radiante.
Good morning, my good people. I'm Chris McCann, your religious educator. and I'm so glad to be with all of you this morning. I'd like to take a moment to raise appreciation for some staff members who, unlike David and Sharon and the minister and me, remain mostly behind the camera. Al Addison, our sexton, who makes sure our buildings stay in good repair. Chuck Burry, our church administrator, who makes almost everything run. Phil Brown, our administrative assistant and tech genius, yes, Phil, genius, who makes sure that Sunday mornings are as painless as possible for all of us and keeps chatty worship participants firmly and lovingly on task during rehearsals. And Hannah Ocean, our bookkeeper, who makes sure our money is in order because the bills are not in quarantine. There are also a couple of office volunteers that Chuck wants to acknowledge. These are the folks who help Chuck help things move smoothly. Alice Tyler, Mary Massey, and Will Snyder. A year ago, we had a plan for in-person worship and programming with well-enhanced safety procedures. And I believe it was 2 or 3 days prior to Sunday that we decided to shift everything online. I think we believed it was going to be a few months at most. And here we are, a year later, still learning, still working out the kinks, still giving each other grace when things go wrong. It has been a strange year, and we've all been through so much. We've all experienced a variety of upheavals in the past year, and perhaps none more so than our children. They are doing the unprecedented, schooling from home, keeping their social circles tight and distanced, keeping their lives close to their homes. This morning, we're going to hear from Layla Darlington Almala, who will be telling us about her experience as a kid in the pandemic.
It's been 1 year since the coronavirus pandemic started. We've all been stuck at home, and I think we're all kind of getting tired of it. So I'm going to talk about the advantages, disadvantages, and what I think of it. So I'll start with the disadvantages. We don't really get to see friends or family. We can't really have big gatherings, and we have to wear masks and social distance. Online school has been a challenge for me, at least, and I know it's been a challenge for some other people. So I think that we all want it to end, but some of the advantages are we have time to reflect on our mental health, and we're able to have some alone time, and if we need to do anything, we can kind of just take some time off and think about it or do something. We get to spend more time with the people who we actually live with, and those are the advantages. Now, what I think of it is, I think it's kind of a good thing because now, if another pandemic ever happens, we'll know what to do, more or less. We'll be more used to wearing masks. We'll be used to social distancing, and we actually have something to look forward to when the pandemic ends, and that's being able to see family, being able to go to real school, and that's my opinion on it, and the advantages and disadvantages, and that's everything I have to say.
Thank you, Layla. A year ago, I was still working, managing the computer infrastructure for my federal agency. In the first 2 weeks of March, I spent all of my work time making sure the whole agency could telework. At the same time, I was a worship associate and part of the quick transition from in-person worship to online. Both of these efforts were mad scrambles, put in place to get us through a few weeks of pandemic shutdown before life would go back to normal. How naive we were. And now it's the 1-year anniversary of when the world stopped. Carolyn Byerly and Chris McCann independently suggested that we do a service about the past year and what we've lost, learned, and gained from being UU during this time of COVID. I'm excited to be part of this service. Personally, I've come through this year relatively unscathed. Nobody I knew has died of COVID. Yes, that is still true. And few who I know have even had it. I had a job that transitioned seamlessly to full-time telework, and then I retired. I've stayed in touch with family and friends through email and Zoom. I had to cancel a vacation, and my daughter had to postpone a wedding, but that's nothing compared to the people who have been seriously ill and lost loved ones. I'm incredibly lucky. And while I've sorely missed being able to sing with the choir and meet with all of you in person each Sunday, the reality is that I wouldn't have been at Paint Branch at all starting last July when I moved from Laurel to Frederick. Holding services in an online format enabled me to remain a part of this beloved community and even sing with the choir, as you'll see this morning with the video of one voice. There are many things about our worship services over Zoom that have helped maintain connection among our community this year. Our chalice dancers have found creative ways to engage us with fresh dances. Our services have been graced by numerous musical selections by our own singers and musicians, and our online joys and sorrows in the Zoom chat have enabled us to provide real-time feedback to each other. Most of our affinity groups and committees have led or plan to lead worship services, keeping us in touch with the diverse interests that make our fabric rich. But it's not perfect. And I know I've learned a lot this year about technology, physical presence, and relationships. First, technology is quite useful for maintaining existing relationships when we're distant and isolated. But maintaining relationships requires more intentionality in the online world. Serendipitous interactions don't just happen. I don't run into someone on Zoom like I did in our physical space. And I don't have random conversations with someone before or after an online meeting. Our coffee hour breakout rooms are great, but they're not enough. Second, maintaining physical distance makes it difficult to establish new relationships. I moved to a new neighborhood and retired last year, and the pandemic has made it much harder to make new friends and start new activities. Here at church, we've only added one new member in the past 12 months, compared with an average of 10 each of the previous 2 years. On the flip side, some of our former members who moved out of the area have been attending online services regularly, and that has certainly been nice. Today, we'll hear from several congregants about their experiences over the past year with our altered world and Paint Branch. And now, Jim Flaherty will lead us in our joys and sorrows.
Morning. Let's now join our hearts and minds in a time of prayer and meditation. As we gather in worship, we carry with us life's hurts and joys. Sometimes the sharing in community of our significant life experiences and milestones can help strengthen the bonds between us and also help ease our burdens. I invite you now to share your joys and sorrows in the chat. And for the intonation, David Chapman will play the song, "Together We'll Get Through This" by Stephen Curtis Chapman. We'll now allow for a short period of silence to acknowledge all that has been shared, as well as those joys and sorrows that were not expressed, yet remain on our minds and in our hearts. May we hold one another in love and kindness, so that this congregation may be a source of strength and comfort, courage and hope in the days and weeks ahead.
Our first speaker today is Tasha O'Neill, a longtime member of Paint Branch.
There are a few of you who don't know me, so allow me to start with a little background. My daughter chose Paint Branch back in 1995 when she was about 5 years old. We'd been shopping for a new church home, and after visiting several churches, she decided this was the one. She said she liked the way it feels. Then I met Abby Crowley, and she immediately put me to work teaching coming of age. Since coming of age, I've taught other Sunday school and OWL classes. Neighboring Faith is my favorite. I had a term as co-chair of religious exploration. That's how I met Shantida. In the early 2000s, I listened to Pat Tompkins tell me how great I'd be as a worship associate and what a wonderful addition I'd make to the leadership of the church. Yeah, I bought that hook, line, and sinker, but I enjoyed being a worship associate. I was very worried about COVID because COVID seemed to like killing Black people at a very high rate. And I had a few comorbidities that COVID would probably really love. This whole pandemic thing found me locked down in my house, alone. My mother passed in 2018 and my daughter moved out a year later. I learned PBUC was going to do Sunday services online beginning March 15th. I thought, hey, that works. I think I've only missed 3 Sundays since being online. I do miss in-person socialization, but as things were, I wouldn't have been able to attend much. As is, I enjoy seeing folks online. I enjoy breakout rooms discussing the service topic of the day. On May 25th, 2020, through an 8-minute and 46-second video, we watched an unknown young man named George Floyd killed by a Minneapolis police officer. We all saw it. There was no way to get away from it. This was heart-crushing for me. I used to work right around the corner from 35th and Chicago Avenue. The murder of George Floyd changed a nation. The following Sunday, you all were here for me. We were right here for each other, and I appreciate that. On Monday, June 1st, 2020, we saw Black Lives Matter protesters who were peacefully protesting the killing of George Floyd being beaten and maced in Lafayette Park. The following service, we were here for one another again. Many of you openly expressed your shock and disgust as you saw a fair representation of America's young people, our children, being beaten and maced by those who were supposed to protect and serve, treating them as less than. Some of you were aware of the difference in treatment between Black people versus white people by the police. But if that didn't open your eyes as you witnessed the violence, then January 6th, 2021, you saw extreme violence again. but not from law enforcement. What a contrast. But through it all, I believe we grew closer together as a community. I hope everyone is woke because there's a lot of work to do. I hope going forward we are able to continue our online service along with our in-person services. My friends at First Baptist of Glenarden, they've got an app for that. This pandemic forced me to stay home more than I normally do, and I needed that. I've learned to truly love my house. It has kept me safe and COVID-free. I practice yoga daily and go for walks with my new dog, Cooper. I adopted him in July from Anne Arundel County SPCA shelter. He's much bigger than his picture, but he needed a good home and someone to love him and his issues. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the UUA's decision to keep us safe and Paint Branch's action to be flexible and innovative. We did our auction all online, y'all. Very cool. I'm grateful for all of you for learning how to navigate to this digital space as we try to maintain some semblance of normality. I am grateful you allowed me to share our story.
Thank you, Tasha. Our next speaker is Ken Schilling, who's one of our chalice dancers.
Good morning. On 8 March 2020, I attended the U.S. Women's Celebration Tour for winning the World Cup. After returning from New Jersey, I learned that COVID-19 had been detected in New York. I had just attended my next to last soccer game in person. Over the past year, I lost family time at soccer games. I halted the drum circles, which we had just started at Paint Branch. Museums were closed. Hiking on trails were encounters with the unmasked. I stopped my weekly ice skating for cardio. I vividly remember the last movie I had attended, as public gatherings were shut down the next day. My favorite TV shows were silent, and my son and his spouse only joined us for outdoor picnics and then left shortly thereafter. In 2019, I was happy to join the Chalice Dancers. I had just presided over the dissolution of Goodloe Memorial. I was starting anew. I come from traditions which did not view dancing as sacred. In 1988, I first viewed the beauty of liturgical dance in UU leadership training. At Goodloe Memorial, I invited dance groups to dance in worship, and the Chalice Dancers graced our worship several times. Dancing was renewal. Due to social distancing in 2020, the Chalice Dancers no longer rehearsed in person. We continue to rehearse and dance via Zoom. I am not an accomplished dancer. When I'm learning, thinking slows me down like a deer in the headlight. Yet I was participating in community. I was doing something meaningful. I also danced at the UU Mid-Atlantic community where I once danced with Sharon Worth. In 2020, I also faced the fearful prospect that UMAC would not be able to meet and would fade out of existence. I called for volunteers to create a virtual UMAC community in a month's time. Montana Menardez was one of the many UMAC volunteers. Under his leadership, they reframed a 1-week experience into a 4-week online extravaganza. We planned events for all ages, all and different interests. We had worship and night owl dancing. We were glad to see each other, even if we could not hug each other. Communities can be resilient and resourceful. People dance to resist what drags them down. People dance to have hope and courage. People dance for the well-being of community. When I dance, I find a sense of wholeness. I transcend the dreary dullness of daily drudgeries. I sense a oneness with the holy mystery, dancing along the web of life, light, and love. I was my mother's dance partner. For polka and square dancing. Now, when I dance, I recall my mother's joy. I allow her joy and enthusiasm to pervade my spirit as I dance. I find the courage to dance without regard to mistakes. She taught me everyone can dance. Sacred dance is an expression of faith, not a performance. Everyone can dance, people of all ages, body shapes, and abilities. Sharon Worth learned sacred dance from Erica Timey in 1975. In the 1930s, Erica taught Reverend Robert Storr to dance in Unitarian worship. He went on to co-found the Sacred Dance Guild, an interfaith group which reaches dozens of sacred dance groups around the world. Eric and Robert were prophetic dancers who proclaimed that everyone can dance in worship. Paint Branch has continued this prophetic legacy over 3 decades. I am deeply grateful to you for sponsoring the Chalice Dancers, an interfaith group, for so many years. Worship is dance, dance is prayer. Everyone can dance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. That was so heartfelt and makes me almost want to dance. Thank you. Now we'll hear the song One Voice by Ruth Moody of the Wayland Jennies. It is performed by women from the Paint Branch Choir.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, sound of one who makes the choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. Sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony. Surrender into the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of one voice.
Next, we have Andy Myrup, a member of our choir, to share his reflection.
Good morning. Since we two are amongst the lucky ones who retired before the virus arrived, our lifestyle hasn't changed a whole lot. We've learned to live smaller, use curbside pickups, and limit our contact with friends and family to Zoom chats. We've gained weight, watched endless TV. Like all of you, it's gotten old. But we've made it work, and we've avoided the virus. Most of our outside interactions have been on Zoom, including, thankfully, Paint Branch services. I miss our big church deck, the conversations we have on it, and yes, I even miss working on it with other members of the BAG committee, and I miss seeing others in our familiar church home. But what I've missed most about Paint Branch is choir. Choir is normally a very shared experience. Every Thursday evening, for about 10 months, we gather, greet each other, and head for our riser seats, almost always using the same ones. After vocal exercises to warm up our pipes, we sing and work on one or more of our upcoming pieces as we listen to the other choir voices singing ours and other parts and fit our own voices with theirs. It's fun to hear a musical piece begin to come together. The end result can be magical. After about an hour, it's break time, in some ways my favorite part. Many adjourn to the vestibule to share wine, non-aid drinks, and snacks brought by one or more of us. Conversational groups form around the food and drink and spread out. We catch up on what's new, while some others stay in the main room and read, practice difficult passages, or just chat. After a while, we reconvene to practice, but not usually until we've wished someone with a nearby birthday date a happy birthday through song ending with a wild piano arpeggio. Maybe their announcements, then back to singing. Practice ends about 9:30 and folks head to their cars, with many more conversations going on. On performance Sundays, we arrive about an hour before the service. We get the choice parking spaces that way for some final musical polishing. When we perform our music live, we get to see what reactions our music brings and to feel the satisfaction of it. It's wonderful to be a part of this musical ministry. During the COVID time, David has made a heroic effort to pull together our virtual choir performances, first with one song for Christmas, and now an ongoing project for a multi-song service coming up in May. What that amounts to is each of us practicing separately and then singing into a somewhat awkward video solo into a cell phone. The performance then magically is combined by a digital genius. It's a really cool thing to do, but boy, it's not choir. What COVID has taken from us is the chance to perform and to practice together. Singing, in my opinion, like dancing, is best when done with others. As for the two of us, we've been awed by the Paint Branch transition from in-person to virtual church, and we've attended almost every service since last March. The wonderful work of Chuck and Phil, David, the worship associates, our ministers, and many others have kept our services afloat during this time of COVID. We have kept our virtual sense of community alive during this long separation. In spite of the many traumas of the past year, we're keeping close and looking forward to a wonderful ingathering back at our church home, eventually. Paint Branch brought Elizabeth and I together, and we treasure it and our whole Paint Branch family. I've learned in this past year how fragile our lives really are, and I'm thankful each day for the one I share with my life and quarantine partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Our next speaker is Ann Cardiff, who will share a few words on her perspective on this past year.
Hello. So I really enjoy going to church events like the Paint Branch Women's Retreat, which should be happening this month. To be honest, I am not as good about attending Sunday services as I wish. I mostly go to Paint Branch for the social events. I lived for Marilyn Pearl's ethnic dinners, for the church auctions, for the holiday parties with the singing and tree decorating. I am still filled with a glowing memory of a wonderful pagan solstice service and dinner, surrounded by people. I love the coffee hour on the deck. See, I'm an extrovert. I love to be surrounded by people. We have all lost that, the opportunity to just be together in all the different ways we manage to do it. For someone like me, an extrovert who certainly takes genuine comfort in being around people, this pandemic has been one version of what I envision hell to be like. I take comfort in talking to friends and to strangers. I'd be willing to bet a couple of you have a light bulb coming on right now, as yes, I am that strange lady that tried to talk to you and you weren't really sure why on earth I was doing that. During this past year, some of my best social time has been the small group chats after Paint Branch services. There have been social events through my workplace, but as a supervisor, I have routinely had to organize them and have felt that perhaps I or some of my coworkers felt obligated to be there. I do think they were good events, and I'm glad we had them. However, I very much appreciate that through Paint Branch, coffee hours have been freely offered to me. I appreciate that I did not have to set it up, didn't have to figure out a time on a friend or a colleague's calendar, or organize the coffee chat myself. I like that apparently no one was obligated to be there, that they chose to be there. Thank you for putting me in a virtual room with some people. I have been grateful to see faces, both of the people I know and those I do not know. Further, the discussions have been fabulous. I think in almost every single one, I either ordered or came close to ordering a new book. I learned things. I got to see people I hadn't seen in a while, meet new people, and in a few cases, put a face and a name together that had eluded me. It's good to be with a group of people who share so many of my values, as this has helped to reinvigorate my commitment to fight against racism and protect our planet. But let me get back to other aspects of the before times, such as the women's retreat I mentioned. I've made it a high priority to go to the women's retreat. In the last few years, my daughter Anya has come with me, not just to be part of childcare, but as a full participant in this multi-generational event. I generally find it to be a rejuvenating day. Oddly enough, this was the last social event of any kind that anyone in our household participated in prior to the falling of the COVID-19 pandemic curtain in 2020. And interestingly enough, something that has been missing in the time of COVID is truly multi-generational activities. We have all had a lot of online meetups in our household, but generally they are kid to kid or grown up to grown up. The one clear exception is the Paint Branch family worship events that happen on Saturday afternoons. I go to this family worship with my daughter. At first, this was a simple necessity, as Anya wasn't going to sit down for yet another Zoom meeting unless I did it with her. I have come to look forward to this time. I think my favorites have included when we made nigiri sushi. It was pretty fun having seaweed, cucumber bits, and rice all over the kitchen table. And luckily, we did not destroy the iPad. I was able to talk to Anya about my Japanese colleague, whom she knows, and tell her that this type of food was from my colleague's culture. Even the simple act of saying things like, this is the church of the open mind, the helping hands, the loving heart, and the radiant spirit has helped me keep Anya connected to this community. On another occasion with much less structure, we got to watch a funny squirrel video together. This too had great value. There's been a lot this year, seeing systemic racism in our country rear its ugly head and dealing with a society that denies science and the value of others by letting a pandemic rage. I've been baking bread and cookies and learning to love puzzles that I didn't realize I liked so much. For me, Paint Branch has provided a lifeline of human connection to people with values I share. For this, I am extremely grateful.
Thank you, Anne. Now, our stewardship testimonial will be given by Joe Deaver and Penny Hughes, who talk about what Paint Branch means to them.
Hey, Joe. We've been asked to be part of this year's stewardship campaign, whose theme is Connected in Community. We've been part of this community for a while, and I think we've been pretty connected.
Yeah, we sure have. We started attending this church a long time ago, around 2000, before we had any kids and shortly after moving here. We've been involved in a few other UU churches before we moved here, but really felt that we would be part of this community for a long time when we came here from upstate New York and bought a house in Silver Spring. That was way back when Barbara and Yeko were our co-ministers and we had a Sinks and Dinks group, but we couldn't join because by the time we found out about it, we'd started to have a kid.
That's right. And speaking of kids, we've had 3 of them while part of the PBUUC community, and have received tremendous material and emotional support during each birthing experience. We didn't have family close by, but church members bought trays of delicious food and offers to babysit the boys when Fallon was born. And then there was the extra help that we got right before moving to Africa when I had to have emergency gallbladder surgery. Also, we had to return from Ghana suddenly in 2017 due to a medical issue, and that left us feeling shocked and emotionally bruised. But being able to engage with this community after a 7-year absence was a life buoy to us. We felt so much love and support from this community. We've been amazed by your thoughtfulness and generosity.
That's a lot of enchiladas over those years, trays of yummy food. I want to add how much I've appreciated how the community's nurtured our children's intellectual and spiritual development after getting born. I have fond memories of policing the hallways, keeping our 2 young boys, who are now teens, from running into people or getting too deep in the woods behind the church. We've really enjoyed and been grateful for the many of you who have taught our kids in RE class over these 17 years.
I fondly remember as well the many groups that I've been a part of, such as the PBUUC Young Moms Group, Shamanic Journeying with Turtle, Cup Services, and now the Paint Branch Pagan Group.
Yeah, there's been all those inspirational services, even the ones without the choir. Our congregation's social justice work, and the community building Friday evening family dinners that we went to 2017 and 18. I've always been amazed at the soul, professionalism, and polish that our worship associates bring to the service they organize. It's a wonder that a lot of them haven't spent time at Star King, Meadville, or Harvard Divinity.
In addition to being nourished and nurtured by this community over the years, we've also had an opportunity to give back in a few ways. We participate in RE programs as teachers. I've worked with every age group but the upper elementary and participated in RE Summer Sundays, including assisting in Tina's annual tie-dye Sunday adventure.
I've never been to one of those, but crafts isn't my thing. We've actually both served in the RE committee, and Penny even worked as a church RE assistant for a short time period. She's been a member of the arts committee and is currently part of the DART movement. And I've been working with the leasing committee for a few years now. We've really seen up close how much work and love that goes into the many committees that are necessary to keep this community thriving.
We've been tremendously impressed with the many ways that we've seen all of you serve this community over the years and decades. Not a month goes by that we don't hear about a member having taught RE 20 years ago who's already completed 2 terms on BOT or some committee. The love and giving we've seen all of you bring to this community and to our own family has been inspirational.
Hey guys, What you doing?
Well, we're recording our family membership's testimonial for PBUUC. Say hi to the people.
Hi, everybody. Dad, what's family membership testimonial?
Well, it's when a lucky few congregation members get to speak to everyone else about how much they love the church and to encourage folks to contribute with some combination of time, talent, and treasure.
Cool. Can I add a few things?
Sure, Fallon.
I love learning and playing with the other kids at our church, our RE classes and activities, but also running around in the woods after service. I love after a long week of school going into church every Friday for those family potlucks where I got to hang out with everyone. I also love the parties, the winter party where we decorated trees and cookies, hunting eggs in the spring, and talent show for me and my dad were in, and where my brothers played the piano. I was so proud of my mom when she had her art show last year. As I get older, I'm enjoying participating in services, such as recording for the service I made a few weeks ago, adding the 8th principle about anti-racism.
Thanks, Fallon. You know, my friend Abby Hadley recently posted a quote that I thought was really apropos to this conversation, and that is too many people think the grass is greener somewhere else, but the grass is green where you water it.
Really profound. Our grass has certainly been green at Paint Branch all these years. We know this is a great community and we look forward to many more years of participation with you all, of giving and getting, and of building and celebrating. Please keep doing what you are all doing to strengthen and build our shared experience, and pledge as generously as you can to help water the Paint Branch grass during the 2021 Stewardship Drive.
Thank you, Joe, Penny, and Fallon. Our church depends upon the financial support of our members and friends. Please give as generously as you are able. This Sunday's offering can be received as indicated in the chat bar. You can make donations online through Breeze or by text, and you can still mail donations to the church office. The offertory music today is May Each Day in the Week Be a Good Day by George Weil. Thank you, David. Our final speaker this morning is Carolyn Byerly, who was one of the people who suggested today's service topic. However, I believe Carolyn is not feeling well, and so her wife, Kay, will read it for her.
Good morning. This was unexpected, but I'll do the best I can to read Carolyn's part. The Sixth Principle in the COVID Era by Carolyn Byerly. In the beginning, it was somewhere else and someone else. Wuhan, China, Europe, Seattle. Then it came closer. Cases appeared and grew along the East Coast in New York, Florida, and then the DC metro area. Well into late last spring, I still did not know anyone who had coronavirus. That would change as cases made their way into my circle of acquaintances. Several of my students' family members were ill, and a grandmother died. An elderly Howard colleague died. The sister of a former student who is an emergency room nurse got sick and recovered. The entire extended family of another friend's wife got sick. A dear friend and colleague in Mexico suffered but recovered. Two friends' mothers died in nursing homes, one in South Africa. One friend in Detroit reported he had lost 23 family and friends, and on and on. It has been impossible to have a conversation with anyone anywhere in the world this last year without talking about COVID. The whole world grew smaller as we bonded around the same awful reality. We have all coped day to day in the face of it. UU's sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, anchors my reality over this last year. My international family of friends merges with those around me to make the world a smaller place in this dark hour. I'm fortunate to serve on a campus that has a mission of social justice. By summer, there was COVID related work to do at Howard that at least offered me a way to feel more useful. We had seen disproportionate growth of COVID cases in Black and Latino communities from the beginning here in the United States. It was obvious why, as large numbers of these communities serve in healthcare, other frontline occupations, and in grocery and retail. They ride public transportation, and sometimes they reside in overcrowded living conditions. In August, I put a CDC Foundation grant in place in my department to examine stigma in Black, Brown, LGBTQ, immigrant, and other marginalized populations. Data from that study have already started shaping national policy and practices around COVID education and prevention. In a second project, I worked with colleagues in our Howard Initiative on Public Opinion, an interdepartmental cooperative, to conduct a national opinion poll on COVID issues in Black and Brown communities. Our findings were presented in 2 national Zoom forums to other researchers and the media. And there have also been moments when I have felt a deep sense of bewilderment. I can barely grasp the reality of so much death, and I have been at a loss for how to grieve. Kay and I live in the zip code with the largest number of COVID cases in Maryland. It happens to be the same zip code that our church is in. Our neighborhood of older single-family homes has many houses occupied by 10 to 20 people, mostly Latin American immigrants. They do not deserve the fate befalling their families. In early fall, one evening at dusk, we held a silent candlelight vigil in our neighborhood to honor those who had suffered COVID. But it does not yet feel like we have achieved the peace, liberty, and justice for all among those around us. There is more to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay, and thank you, Carolyn. We never expected to still be in a pandemic 1 year later, yet here we are. As we go forth into the week, let us remember, even though we are physically apart, the church is us, each and every one of us together. May we be a beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it. After we sing Spirit of Life and Peter extinguishes the chalice, join a small chat group in a breakout room by staying on Zoom. And now let's sing Fuente de Amor, Spirit of Life.
As I extinguish this chalice, I look forward to a time when we are all vaccinated and can worship again in our beautiful meeting house.